Yes, up to you.
Thank you very much, Tina, for the presentation. Thank you for everyone to come here to listen. I will start. Actually, is the last intervention, right? Before the workshop of the death workshop of Jesus Poveda. And well, I will try to keep it short and simple in order to arrive with a clear mind to the workshop. Well, during this event, it has been said many aspects and characteristics of some particular human understanding of death. In these 20 minutes, I am going to speak about death from two perspectives: the perspective of my theoretical experience and the perspective of my practical experience. The first one, the perspective of my theoretical experience, according with what I have been investigating throughout all my life, I have found some words of a Chilean psychiatrist named Claudio Naranjo that I consider worth sharing in this space. And he said in this talk the following: human beings do not understand death in a way that it should empower us to have a more fulfilled life. Someone once said that we, as human beings, wouldn't be that narcissistic if we were aware of the fact that eventually we are all going to die. Of course, we all know we are going to die, but this statement refers to the presence of the idea in our consciousness mind in a daily basis. If we will feel that death is just around the corner, that it can come unexpectedly, if we truly feel that, maybe we will dedicate a bit more to seeking that which is not mere survival and comfort or money or status. We will pursue the deeper things in life more if we will know that life is a scarce resource. It is said that we know things intellectually, but we don't really know them with all our well-being because they are too vast, too deep, too undigestible. A person, the further they lie from the true life, the more lost they are, the less in tune with their potentialities, with their destiny, the less they are living for the good of their soul or for the good of others, and the more traumatic is the awareness of death. In this context, the reality is less bearable. Death signifies a more tremendous awakening to a person whose life lacks meaning. On the other hand, a person who is satisfied with life can say, I am already satisfied, I could die in peace. What is it that people know least about life? People don't see the blind spot due to the mechanism of repression, which prevents seeing certain things that are right in front of their eyes. Nature has given us the possibility not only to see, but also not to see when we don't want to see. Gurdjieff, this great Russian master, who was sort of a Russian Socrates, at the beginning of the century said that we got a special organ in us to numb the awareness of death. He said, the nature itself wants us unconscious, just as we feed piglets on lambs to fatten them up and then eat them. Nature also wants to fatten us up to eat us later. What we live lies as biological beings for the purpose of nature. And the living for the higher purpose is like stealing something from the nature. It's like trying to insert something into nature that belongs to another level. It is similar as Sri Vinas presented in his presentation. So it's as if nature has an inertia that is satisfied with us being living beings. It doesn't need us to be so conscious, but the purpose of life is fulfilled by being more conscious. Is it? So all spiritual traditions take very seriously the idea that consciousness begins with awareness of death. In other words, the awareness that everything is evanescent, impermanent, transitory. That is the moment we are living here. If we don't seize it, we will never seize it again. Or finally, the idea of intuiting our mortality, introduced into philosophy by this so complicated philosopher that so few people understood, but that so many people mentioned, Martin Heidegger, which was, living towards death is living is being. It is being towards death, and it is the structure of being towards death. So therefore, just by ending this quote, Claudio says that if we want to awaken, if we want to be authentic, we have to connect with that reality, with the reality of death. So, having this said, this is a very, from my point of view, interesting chat that Claudio Naranjo said before he was dead. Let's say it is somehow a theoretical point of view of what is the consideration of death from my perspective. But now I'm going to give some information about my practical experience about death, starting with the let's say with the chronological speech of which were the moments when I experienced death in anyhow, right? So when I remember the first time I experienced death in a deep way, I was more or less 17 years old. I was with my friends. We were like 7 or 8 people. I don't remember what we were talking about, but it was somehow related to the idea of death or the idea of the infinite conception of the universe or so on. Suddenly, it was something spontaneous actually, but suddenly it was like a lighting ray that passes through all my body, and I started to feel like very anxious in terms of, wow, being connected with that sense of infinity or finity, this concept, this dual concept, let's say, it brought me a very, very strong sensation within my body. I started to feel very anxious. I started to feel very, very, very bad. I had to go away, and I had like anxiety crisis or somehow. Of course, eventually I recovered myself, and it was somehow, okay, this is an experience. I am young. I think it is normal. No, I didn't share it with anyone. And well, years passed by. More or less with 20 years old, a neighbor from close to my parents' house died in an accident, and it happened again. It happened again. Somehow, this mental aspect of death, infinity, and so on started to, let's say, burn inside my mind, let's say. And I again had an anxiety crisis. I started to feel very, very nervous, to feel like almost going to fall to the floor. But again, it eventually passed, and nothing happened. And I had another third experience, similar to the two ones I have mentioned before. And so far, so to that moment, that were my, let's say, experience with death in a deep manner. And then I started to look for intellectual or rational explanations about death. What is death? What is it written with from any interesting authors? The death from the religion perspective, from the academic perspective, and so on. And I have to say that none of those information satisfied my curiosity. But I leave it like, okay, I think it will be coming eventually again, and I will tackle it proactively from a reactive point of view instead of a proactivity point of view. So years passed by, and 3 years ago, more or less, I had a very strong existential crisis. I was 1 year off. I was diagnosed with a severe depression. And let's say I had a very nice help from someone, and well, I started to change my habits. I started to be more in touch with, let's say, my inner self. I started to prioritize myself. I started to treat myself with a more lovely way. I started to practice yoga. I started to meditate. I started to be more in touch with the text of Buddhism, Hinduism, as well from the Christian religion, and so on. So I started to get in touch with these deep learnings or deep texts or deep information about these, so let's say, traditions, schools, religion paths, and so on. I had during that phase, I had some moments, some transcendental moments that I felt very, very deeply connected with my inner self. And one of them, it was very, very, very different, comparing it to a pleasure moment that I as well have experience with pleasure. Let's say not pleasure, but nice sensations in the body. But I had one that later I started to investigate and to study about it. And I had one that made me feel like I had like a black hole in my inside, like everything was going to disappear. It's like an energy implosion sensation. I started to throw it up. I started to go to the toilet. It was very, very, very strong feeling of sensations within all my body. And I really, really had a lot of fear because that sensation was very, very new to me. It was somehow related to the ones I told you before, the 3 ones I told you before when I was younger. But seriously, it was much more deeper and much more intense. But since that night, and the next morning when I wake up and I started to let's say think about what it happened, or think about what kind of sensation did I have, or think about blah blah blah, so on. I started to read and study what did happen to me, blah blah. And in some traditions, in some schools, it is called an experience, let's say a close experience to death. And it gave me, of course, in the moment, it gave me a very difficult moment in terms of holding the deep and strong sensations in my body. But afterwards, it gave me a deep compression of what is or at least I imagine what would be like the moments before going out from this world. And since that moment, when I feel anxious, when I feel like I'm having a bad moment, when I feel in war with myself or in war with others, or I am not connected with my inner self, and so on, when the death was something that controlled me, let's say, the sensations of my body and so on, it now became something that makes me relativizar, no? Helps me to touch ground and to say, okay, this is actually what Claudia Naranjo said, to have this awareness of death more in our daily basis, more in our step-by-step path within our lives. And in order to feel more fulfilled in terms of the highest point of the, for example, Abraham Maslow pyramid that was mentioned before by Gregorio. That he's over there. So, getting to the final point. In summary, I wanted to share with you that for some reason that I still don't know, I would like to think that eventually I will discover the reasons behind these weird experiences happen to me. But despite of that, I wanted to share with you this empowerment that I found within the deep understanding of death, the sensation of not being anymore physically in this world, because it actually empowers me. It actually makes me feel like, okay, it doesn't matter. Everything will be gone. Everything is transcendent. Everything will be forgotten eventually. So it gives me an interesting tool to manage the difficulties of this interesting life, right? And just to get into the end, I would like to read a quote that I have more than 5,000 quotes that I would like to share with you, but I don't know why, but this quote is already here. So for some reasons, so I wanted to share it with you to come to an end. So this quote was said by Chandra Mohan Jain, also known in the West in the West by Bhagwan Sri Ratnis, or also known as well by Osho. And I will as well use his way of pronunciate the speeches he used to do. I will go for it. He said, "Life is more than logic. Life is a paradox. Life is a mystery." Thank you very much.
So thank you very, very much, Guillermo. Always when we get personal and share some of our experiences, it relates to many more of us, and for this time of the conference, where we're nearing the closing, but the starting of the workshop, it puts the personal experience as being paramount in really to try and sort out who we are, how the world works, and where we're going, and where we've come from. So if anybody has questions for Gregorio or Guillermo, or comments, please make them. Anybody like to share anything or say something? Yes, please.